Okay. Right, we're back into part two of my faith conversation with Margaret, and she's been talking about her school years and then how she left school and became part of Glenfield Methodist Church and the youth group there. So Margaret, let's go on from there then. What kind of key events do you see as you went through, developed through your adult years?
Through my adult years, well, we married in 1970 at Glenfield, and we'd actually bought a house a few months before that. It needed a lot doing to it, so it wasn't livable in before we got married. But we did get the house sorted before we moved in, and that was April 1970. And we continued to come occasionally to Glenfield Methodist, but we also took part in a lot of the services at Earl Shilton Methodist Church.
Where you were living at the time? Where
we were living, yes. And that was another good learning curve. I think we probably learned to be more independent of, shall I say, traditional kind of things that you do when you're a kid.
Yeah.
And we learned how to be adults in faith,
yeah,
rather than learning, because we took on a Sunday school class, which neither of us had done before.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people do it as teenagers, but we were grown adults when we started that.
Yeah.
And that taught us a lot, but we were young enough to remember the sort of antics that we got up to, you know, so we were very aware of the kids. And we used to try and get them to be really quiet in the Sunday school class, because we were in the vestry, which was just behind the pulpit. And we had to tell them to be a little quieter. And eventually we asked permission to take the Sunday school class in our own house, which we were allowed to do. And the kids just stayed on forever. It wasn't like we got them for an hour. We had them for a whole afternoon on a Sunday.
They must have been doing something right.
So, yeah, and we have met some of them since, and they've said, you know, we treasure what you put into us, kind of thing. So that's very rewarding.
You began by talking about a lady in Sunday school who had a profound influence on you, and now it's your
turn
to give back to younger people. Yeah,
you're putting it back into someone else. Yeah. Then when we moved back to Glenfield, and by that time I was expecting Lorraine, so then we had her baptised a few months after she was born, and that was 3 years on from us getting married. So and that was a lovely time as well. It was very special when your children are baptised, isn't it? It's well, we called it christening in those days, but
same thing.
And talking of baptism, I wanted to be baptised from being about, I don't know, this is my next step really, from being about 25, 26, something like that, not long after we were married, really. And things kept happening to stop me, but anyway, eventually I was baptised in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
which is a big leap forward, but it was a big leap forward in my faith. I had been ill for a very long time, and again, nobody knew whether I was going to live or die. And the doctors had sort of said to me, well, he said, I can't see that you need this operation, but it's the only thing I can offer you. He said, I'm going to offer you a shunt. And so I had a shunt put in 2001, and it was like switching a light on. It didn't mean I could see anymore, but it brought me back to life. And I knew then that I really had to be baptised. And our local minister in Glenfield said, no, you've been baptised as a child, you don't need it again. And I said, no, I was christened as a child, I was baptised.
You want it by total immersion?
That was a promise my parents made, not me. Anyway, the argument wasn't resolved, so I went to the minister at Kirby Free Church and asked him if he would baptise me, because I knew they had a pool, and he said yes, but first of all I must be sure that you're sure that's what you want. So he came here for about a couple of months, I think. Every week he'd come and went through, certain questions, and we read things from the Bible, and I obviously convinced him that I was ready, and I was baptised in 2002, and that was another real experience of the Spirit being with me. And
so what would you say, Margaret, was the significance for you of that, what you might call baptism as a person of faith? What was the significance of it for you?
The significance, it was just an urgency. It was something I had to do. I can't really explain why the urgency was there, but I needed it for a long time. And
so it's a step of obedience, really, you felt?
Yes, obedience is the word. And once I had been baptised, I found I had more gifts to give to others, more insight, more, and I prayed a lot more, and I found it easy to pray for others. It was another light being switched on, really.
And since then, what's anything particular stand out in terms of your faith journey?
Yes, I think there have been steps along the way that I have noticed at the time, but they've been steps of conviction, not, the faith is there, it's with me, it'll always be with me, but it's like a confirmation. And I can't actually name them now, but I have had various experiences along the way, and sometimes I have said things to people that aren't my words. And I know they're not my words, but I know I have to say them because they're asking.
Like a channel, kind of speaking words that God's given to you to.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It's a strange gift, but it is something I do have from time to time at appropriate times. Obviously.
You are a great encourager. I know that we've experienced that ourselves. you and Dave, your support and care for us. So that's been really good. Now I know that one of the things that you're passionate about is the whole life of prayer, particularly encouraging prayer within the life of the church. So why do you think prayer is so important?
It's our only way of really connecting with God. If we don't open ourselves to prayer, then we can't receive anything. We have to actually open ourselves to. Sometimes you are in a really dark place and you feel, a long way from God. Mm-hmm. But even at those times, if you open yourself up truly, and I mean truly, not just pretend, you do receive a connection, and that connection, even if there's not words, is very comforting. And you will find, if you then turn to your Bible and read, I always find Acts very encouraging. Of course, the Gospels are important because that's where Jesus is there in person here on earth and talking to people. But I find the Acts of the Apostles very encouraging because there's so many people there that, including Paul, that really rejected Jesus and the words that he had spoken, and yet he was converted. Paul was converted in a way that the only way he could have been converted, I think. And God does that to people still, I believe. He strikes them down and makes them listen. But we have a knowledge, and we have intellect that can reach out, and we can touch him. We can reach him.
That's great. Thank you, Margaret. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you is about the fact that you lost your sight when you were still a child, and how I know you were amazing actually in how you. I mean, sometimes people don't even notice that you can't see. You just do things just as anybody else would do. But have you ever come to a point where you've kind of said or complained to God that you haven't got your sight anymore, or what? How's that worked out?
Yeah, I was about 30, I think, and every night up to that time, I prayed to have my sight restored. Mm-hmm. And he said, I can use you as you are.
Yeah.
So there you are.
And actually, that's absolutely true. God does use you, Margaret, in amazing ways. And
yeah, well, I think it was after that the gift of prayer and reaching out to other people in prayer came. So
brilliant. So, Margaret, we're kind of coming towards the end of our time. So I want to ask you two questions to finish with. The first is, what advice would you offer to someone in their life as a disciple or follower of Jesus?
I would suggest that, first of all, they feel, if they are seeking Jesus, mm-hmm. then first of all, you need to find friends and possibly a minister or a vicar who you find approachable, mm-hmm. But also keep praying, because I think the connection with God is the most important thing. Yeah. And we will find from that we will find friends that can help us. And the other thing is, these days, to find a Bible translation that you're comfortable with. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably, if it was somebody of my age and simple education, shall I say, I would suggest the Message is a good one to start on.
Yeah.
But you know, other people have different views on that. So
right, that's really good advice, Mark. Thank you. And the final question is, what have you got a favourite Bible verse or passage?
I'm not very good on single verses. Obviously, I love the one in John 3:16.
Yeah.
But my comfort blanket, if you like, from the Bible is Psalm 139 and Psalm 23. So I can't choose from any.
The sound's gone a bit funny at that point, Margaret.
As a one single one. So
just tell us briefly why those two psalms are special to you. I may have lost.
Well, I think 23. Probably. Are we all right?
Yeah, carry on, Margaret. I think we've got back with you.
Okay. Psalm 23, I think, probably goes back to childhood days, but even reading through the words of the 23rd Psalm now, I get a lot of comfort from that.
Yeah.
And also 139, I just find that, again, that is so me. You know, you can I just read every word and think, this is directed at me. And just read it and find out about it if any of you haven't read it before.
Brilliant.
139.
What great advice. Margaret, thank you ever so much for all that you've shared in these two segments. And on a personal note, thank you to you and Dave for the love and care and support you've offered to Sue and I, which has been such a blessing. So thank you for this, and God bless you.
And you too. Thank you.